What can I do for you?
Oh, little song, little dance, Batman's head on a lance. Tell me, what do you know about...
I don't know anything about Batman.
Really? Well, how about a little you and me?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. I'm alone once again doing This Week in Batman. Obviously, the co-host, the man that actually knows Batman, certainly much better than I. Josh is still not with us, still feeling under the weather. I actually haven't heard from him in a couple of days. Hopefully he's doing a little bit better. Hopefully he'll be back next week and possibly this Saturday on the Aficionados. Do not know that yet, but we are praying and hoping for a speedy recovery to our good friend Josh. If you have the opportunity, you can reach out to him on social media or go to his website, popbyculture.com. Let Josh know that he's in our thoughts, prayers, well wishes, and all those good things for Josh. And definitely positive vibes for a quick recovery as he's still under the weather. But the show must go on, folks, unfortunately. So you're getting second rate This Week at Batman because it's just me. And I do know the character. I've been reading all the comics, but I don't know the character quite as well as Josh, unfortunately. But we are fully into Fear State. We've got 3 issues that tie in this week. We got the mainline Batman. We've got a Nightwing issue. And we've got a Catwoman, as well as what seems to be a somewhat delayed issue of Batman the Detective, which is obviously not associated with Fear State, but is interesting in its own right. We finally get some answers as to who is Equilibrium this week. So if you've been looking for that, this is going to be the issue for you. Now, before I get into the details of all 4 of these comic books, I do want to say, if you haven't been going over to our friends at Comics Elite website to check out these covers, you are missing out. This week is Buddy Mask number 4. Obviously, that is the Breakout series from writer Paul Tobin with art by Andrea Moody. This cover is from Nathan Zerdy. I believe it's printed at only 500 issues. And if you want this bad boy, it is up right now, and you're going to have to get to it quick before it sells out, as these supplies are very limited. There is a link. There's the information in the video description about Comics Elite if you want to go and get your hands on this magnificent cover. Now let's get to the Batman. There were plenty of things happening at Batman, although I'll be honest, we're going to talk about Batman, the comic book first. This thing is crawling by, and this has been probably my biggest criticism of James Tynion on the Batman title, is the pacing is very, very, very decompressed. The other big complaint that I normally have for James Tynion writing Batman is that Batman loses an exceptional amount, and he often has to be saved by Harley Quinn, Catwoman, and the other female characters around it. That doesn't happen in this issue. So I'm not going to be talking about that second issue, but this thing is still maintained to be very slow. We are talking about Batman 113, James Tynion, Jorge Jimenez on art. The art, once again, is sterling. You can't touch it. This is the best illustrated comic in all of DC Comics, possibly at the big 2. Probably at the big 2. I should cage that better, because this thing is absolutely gorgeous. How Jorge Jimenez takes this pretty mundane and boring comic book script and makes it look this great, I do not know, but he is more than pulling his own weight, in my opinion. And I know I'm in the minority here. I know a lot of people really like James Tynion's Batman run. It's just really slow. Although this issue is very interesting when you look at it through the lens of the time that we're in right now. And I imagine a lot of people notice this as well. Is this new version of Scarecrow based on Dr. Fauci? I think he is. And we're certainly seeing like the magistrate almost feels like maybe the police state in Australia and some of the things that we're seeing in the United States. Like we even see a man getting arrested for going out to get milk in this comic book. It's like, hey, it's funny you put this in here for dramatic effect. I've seen this in the real world within the last few weeks. And I don't believe James Tynion, he could have planned this out, but with all the pandemic stuff that we're seeing and kind of the breakdown of society that we're seeing in certain places, it certainly feels like it's influenced James Tynion's writing in this issue. And it feels like what we're experiencing right now might be the fear state, just for the Western societies or even the world. It's affecting us even in the Philippines. Unfortunately, beyond all that kind of real world comparison, and we even like the anti-Oracle, who we know is named Seer because we read I Am Not Batman, how they didn't sync these things up better, is being portrayed as like the fear porn, like news media that we've been getting for almost 2 years now. James couldn't have, there's no way he planned on it be that closely connected to everything that we're experiencing in the world. But maybe he did. Maybe he's as against a lot of these things as people you wouldn't expect him to be. Unfortunately, this is like the third issue in a row, besides those interesting things happening on the periphery, of Scarecrow explaining what Fear State is and what his big plan is. And then we're hearing about Simon Saint and Nakano, and like, you think they're all working together, and it turns out they're all just trying to screw each other over, which doesn't, it's kind of stupid. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. Speaking of not making sense, we see Montoya. She's the new commissioner, right? And Montoya, she's like, this seer person or anti-Oracle, they're still calling her anti-Oracle here, but we know that's a seer, is full of crap. Batman's not dead. Everything that's happening is a lie. This whole magistrate thing is falling apart. Batman shows up in her office, and he's like, listen, this is all a ploy by Simon Saint, the magistrate, Mayor Nakano. They're all in cahoots together. This is why all these things are happening. And she has already said with her own mouth, she recognizes all these things are happening. But it's not enough. You got to get a tie between Simon Saint and Mayor Nakano or something stupid. It's like, what are you talking about? You've already validated what Batman is telling you. And you're like, I don't see the connection. You just talked about the connection. You get out of here. This is another really stupid point. It's essentially like the second half of the book. And apparently Batman has virtual reality technology that he's incorporated with mother boxes because of comic books that allows people to see into his mind. So Ghostmaker, well, Batman's the one with the mind-seeing mother box VR technology strapped to his head. So Ghostmaker can go in there and extract and find whatever it is that Scarecrow's left something behind in Batman's head. He needs to go fight it. And so Ghostmaker's in there. Before anything interesting happens, he's like, hey, we're going to my mind. And so they go into Ghostmaker's mind, even though he's not wearing the mother box enhanced VR technology. Like, how the hell are they in Ghostmaker's mind? But I guess comic books. So they can recall that Ghostmaker and Jonathan Crane had a conversation about Fear State when Jonathan Crane was in uni, and Ghostmaker, I don't know, interviewed him for a week. It's really dumb. I don't know why they need this VR technology to present this information. You would think that maybe Ghostmaker would have presented it already. But it was really contrived and it just isn't well executed. None of this, the Batman stuff is not well executed. I wouldn't recommend this comic. I will recommend the next three, all to varying degrees. They'll have certain things that detract from the story. But this James Tynion Batman one is it's crawling along under Fear State. It's not all that interesting, and there's just a lot of convoluted kind of stupid stuff. Is like, you have a character be like, I see all the things that are wrong, and the Batman's like, yes, and this is how it's all connected. They're like, I don't see it. You got to put this together. It's like, what are you talking about? Get out of here. So I don't recommend this, although the final page does tease a Peacekeeper 1 versus Peacekeeper 10 throwdown that no one wanted because you're not emotionally or heavily invested in the characters. We don't even know what Peacekeeper 10 can do other than it looks like an upgrade. Whatever. Like I said, I don't recommend this. Let's talk about something I would recommend. Some people might be surprised that I'm recommending Tom Taylor's Nightwing 84 with villain artist Robbie Rodriguez. I'm only speaking about the quality of the story. It is not great, but I will barely recommend this thing as far as a Nightwing Fear State tie-in. It's kind of weird. So they open up the story, and basically Nightwing, he gets a little encrypted message. Man, I got an itch on my nose. You got to give me a second. I got to get this bad boy. You're not going to see me pick it, but it's going to happen. So Nightwing receives this distress call in his ear from Oracle, basically saying, you need to go back to Crime Alley. Something's happening in Gotham. And then the writer, Tom Taylor, explains to you why it's stupid for Nightwing to abandon Bloodhaven at this point. He's just made all these promises. He's supposed to be saving the city, and he's just going to abandon it. It's like, well, it's a good thing he's so committed to saving Bloodhaven that at the drop of a hat, he just leaves it behind, even though there are only 50,000 Batman characters already in Gotham. Whatever. So you got to throw logic kind of out the window. There is a really nice moment, and it definitely elevates the comic, probably into recommend type territory, where Dick Grayson, he's got Bitewing, and he needs to drop the dog off. He needs someone to watch it. He goes to drop it off with a friend. He's got a couple of kids, and he feels bad, like he's burdening this lady and her children with taking care of the dog. And before he can even ask, they take the dog from him, and they're playing with the dog, and they're like, so he could stay. Or she could stay. He's like, yes, she can stay. And hopefully the dog turns out better than the goldfish, which apparently this kid murdered. That part was strange. Certainly intimated or hinted at that the boy murdered Dick Grayson's goldfish the last time. You know, obviously that was a moment of levity and a try to joke. This is a pretty no, you're in a moment of levity already. I don't know that joke was necessary, but that was probably the highlight of the entire story. Wouldn't you know it, because we all know it, that wasn't Oracle calling out for Dick Grayson on the closed loop encrypted communications. That was the magistrate, the seer, the anti-Oracle, laying a trap for one Nightwing who arrives in Crime Alley, and all of a sudden he's surrounded by the peacekeepers who have already been thoroughly throttled by Batman in the other issue, and he gets in there and he's about to take them all out, right? Because he's Nightwing and he's got his screaming sticks, and then Batman comes down, and for the most part, Robbie Rodriguez's art in this is not very good. It borders on sucks. Actually, once we get to this action scene and after this one cool panel of Bruce descending into Crime Alley to back up Nightwing, which is badass, everything else sucks. It's like remember when you used to watch movies with shaky cam? You're like, I wish you'd stop shaking the camera so I can see what the hell's going on. But they wanted to feel more frenetic. That's what this art is, and it's absolutely awful. So I miss Bruno Redondo greatly for this issue. So once you get this great picture of Batman coming in to back up Nightwing in Crime Alley, the art goes to crap. Obviously, they defeat all the stormtroopers who are completely inept and incapable. There's a weird line. Batman's like, I know you didn't need backup. Like, you would have been able to take him out, but I couldn't lose his son after losing my parents in Crime Alley. Is like, you just said that he didn't need your help. Like, okay. It was just to add the cameo in there. If he didn't have the line, he should have just said, you're welcome. I got other stuff to do. But, you know, they wanted to throw Batman in here because it's a Batman Fear State crossover. But that line didn't make any sense. He literally contradicts himself within the same word bubble. I guess the big highlight, or perhaps the highlight, depending on who you are, is at the end, Oracle's had enough. She's had enough of the Seer, the anti-Oracle, and she needs to go out and find out where they're infiltrating their closed network. And we see her don the Batgirl costume. Dick Grayson is not on board with this. He's like, listen, you got that bad spy. You probably shouldn't be out there. And she's like, listen, hun, sit down and take a siesta. I'm going to do this, whether you like it or not. And it looks like the two of them are going to go out hunting for the Seer anti-Oracle. So if you were a big fan of Tom Taylor's Nightwing, it certainly within the first couple of pages addresses a couple of the plot points that he's been working with, and then never addresses anything other again. So if you like that, what he's been doing, and you don't care about Fear State, you can skip this issue. It literally has no impact on what you've been reading. If you're really big into the Batman Fear State stuff, you could. It feels like you could skip this, other than the last page when you find out that Barbara Gordon is Batgirl and is going to go hunt down the Oracle, the anti-Oracle. It really has no, like, it doesn't matter to everything that's been happening in Fear State. It's very much superfluous and added on with very little stakes to the actual Fear State thing. But I would recommend it because it's competent. There's some fun moments. I don't particularly like the art. It definitely gets worse in the second half. But there is a cute moment with the dog. We do get to see Batman and Nightwing absolutely kick butt together. And you get to see the return of Barbara Gordon as Batgirl. There's certainly enough to read this comic. But do not expect anything that you've been getting in Nightwing. And do not expect this thing to be important for Fear State, because it's neither of those. All right, let's get into something that a comic book that has been must read like lights out. It is definitely hindered by the inclusion into this Fear State event. It is Catwoman 36, Ram V. We get a new artist, Nina Vacueva, who's replacing Fernando Blanco. I personally prefer Fernando Blanco's art because, I'm used to it. It really fits this thing here. But Nina is a perfectly fine fill-in artist. The styles are pretty similar, especially with the color work. It's not seamless, but it's it's close. It's not going Fernando Blanco to Robbie Rodriguez. You know what I'm saying? It's not jarring at all. So good choice on fill-in artist for Catwoman 36. And I will give this to Ram V, who I think is one of the best writers in all comics. He is able to successfully integrate the things, the plot points that were going on in Catwoman in in Crime Alley into Fear State in this issue. Like, he's wrapping up points that he's been working on while integrating Fear State into his Catwoman book. That shows good craft, good use of his space. Instead of having a bunch of filler and nonsense that doesn't mean anything, he's maximizing his pages and making the comic book worthwhile. And the big point that we do get as far as the previous Catwoman stories, we get to see Selina take her sister. I think it's down to the docks, but I think she takes her to the docks, and she says goodbye to Maggie, who obviously has almost just died at, I believe, the hands of Father Valley, who just assassinated that Hadley guy, but was trying to kill her sister. It was an emotional moment. There's a weird part. To me, it was weird. To other people, it might have seemed like a pretty good comparison, where Maggie tells Selina that she knows she needs to leave because most people that get close to Selina end up burning up. You know what I mean? It feels like more like a Batman thing. That's why he's always a loner and kind of stuff. You get too close to Batman, and bad things happen to you. I don't necessarily feel that way about Catwoman. I don't know. Maybe I just haven't been reading the character long enough. I feel like I've read enough of the character, but that's not the sense that I get. But apparently that's the sense that her sister Maggie has about people who get close to Selina. Obviously, we did just see with Hadley, he did die. So she's probably pretty traumatized for that. Now, stop me if you heard this one. As we get into the Fear State portion of the story, there's a fake broadcast about Batman's death that brings Catwoman back out. She dons the costume, she jumps on her motorcycle, I believe, and starts heading into Gotham. And you would think, well, Bruce Wayne loves Selina Kyle. He knows that there's this lie that he's dead out there. He knows that that's circulating all throughout the city. He knows where she is. Why hasn't he told his lover, his future bride, Selina Kyle, that he's not in fact dead? Feels like it would be a traumatic moment. He's had the opportunity to do a million other things. Why didn't he tell Selina? It makes it feel like Batman doesn't care about her. And while I do appreciate that, I don't think that was the point of the story. It was just like, hey, here's a fake broadcast. It feels like you should probably know that he's not dead. And of course, she mows through the peacekeepers. Like we see Batman just stormtrooper these damn things. They're basically cannon fodder at this point. Are the peacekeepers supposed to be intimidating? Are they supposed to be dangerous? Are they supposed to be threatening? Because they aren't. They're just cannon fodder. They just get destroyed. Yeah, I don't think they've built up the threat of the peacekeeper force as being all that threatening, because they're just getting destroyed in hand-to-hand combat, even though they're robots half the time. So I think that's been a little bit ineffective, but Catwoman 36 is definitely a recommend. Of the four, this is probably the best issue. It's not a highly recommend because it absolutely gets derailed by this fear state nonsense, but Ram-V does the best he can. Also, in the end, we do see the Gardener and Harley Quinn are ready to join the fight after Catwoman has like got her crime alley, her forces together from Alleytown. I think I said Crime Alley earlier in reference to Catwoman. I meant Alleytown. So you're talking a lot of Batman stuff. There's too many redundant terms. Also, there's definitely hints at Ivy being important, and there's a new Ivy, and she's under the city and being protected. And I think they might even, they certainly mention Magic Molly and whatever that group she's a part of in Batman. I think they do here too. I could care less. They've forgotten to make you care about this plot point, but they keep bringing it up as if it's important. It's only important if I care. So you're gonna have to work harder on that one. This one's good. You actually tie up some loose ends as far as the plot goes. You see, Weasley is being brought back into the city. There's too many fake broadcasts. At this point, the Bat family should have figured out that this anti-Oracle unseer person isn't real, or the seer person isn't in fact valid. But somehow they're all still being fooled. But it's good. Now let's get into Batman the Detective number 5, a series based on the art of Andy Kubert. Just like been waiting for this thing to pop off, and it doesn't quite do that, but it certainly picks up. Outside of Batman, I would say Batman the Detective is the second best illustrated series at DC Comics. Andy Kubert is absolutely destroying it with the art of this comic book. It is gorgeous. It is beautifully rendered. Really interesting take on Bruce Wayne. Obviously, he's an older gentleman. Sounds like he doesn't have any family left, although it kind of doesn't play out within the story. I don't think Tom Taylor is following his own rules with this thing. He's obviously in Europe. There's a bunch of people that are being murdered that he has saved, during his career. The first people murdered were like on a plane. There's the big reveal. We finally get the big reveal who Equilibrium is. This should have happened in issue 2 or 3, because the big reveal is that this is a new character. This isn't anybody we knew from his past or anything, which would have been like, oh my God, this is just like, okay. And I think it would have probably been better to reveal it earlier, because you've been building up to this, and then when you get it, you're like, who cares? I don't even know who that character is. There are some issues with it, which I'm going to I'm going to explain here in a minute. There are a couple of issues. I'm recommending this almost solely based on the art, but we do finally get the reveal, and there are some strong plot elements in here in comparison to like the Batman. But this is a barely recommend. Why does Bruce, who's apparently his entire Bat family's dead, he's a lone brooding character, like he's in Europe, all of a sudden he decides to call in a favor, and he literally knows every person of significance that's in a position of power in all of Europe. Like, what the hell's going on here? Why does he know all these people? It doesn't even make sense within the confines of the story and the world that Tom Taylor has created in Batman the Detective. In this guy's opinion, you may disagree. We can always do that. Now let's get to the villain. The problem is you have to accept comic book logic to believe the villain and their motivations. And even at that point, it is a hard stretch to believe any of this stuff. It turns out the new character is a former pupil of Ducard, who apparently knew who Equilibrium was the whole time. At least the whole time that he and Bruce have been in conversation, he forgot to mention who this person was, even though they were murdering everyone that Batman had saved. Was he in cahoots with that person? We did not get that. But here's the problem. Okay. So this villain, Equilibrium, apparently Batman had saved this dude. He was going to die. Batman saved him along with someone else. And then 3 years after saving him, this guy was out drinking and driving, I believe, and he hits Ducard's former pupil who had quit because she'd found the love of her life and had a child. She's in there with her husband, and their child. I think it was a boy, but it could have been a girl. That's neither here nor there. You don't really get to meet the child. But this dude that Batman had saved is drinking and driving, hits the car, murders the husband and the child, leaving the woman a widow, and obviously a mother who has lost a child. And she's so upset and guilt-ridden, or so upset and over losing her husband, her spouse, and her child, that she decides that she's going to go kill anybody that Batman has saved, because that's clearly the reason that she lost her husband and child. But I'm supposed to believe that this person who's so traumatized, so upset at the loss of her husband and child, decides to go out and kill hundreds, if not thousands of people at this point, who are also spouses and children of other people. So she decides she's going to repay this grief on 1,000 other people, even though that's not the character's motivation. It does make sense. Also, now this character certainly had training by Ducard, was a detective. Where do they get the connections to put an entire group of people Batman saved on a plane together? Like book an entire flight of only people that Batman saved flying to Europe. How do you get the pilots and the crew to be all that? And then there's like some meeting of political meeting there at the end where they're going to blow up the building, and it's the only people in the building are people Batman saved. How does this person even conceive of doing this? They don't have these kind of connections. So, like I said, you got to believe comic book logic. I hate it when things are so convoluted or stupid, is another way to put it, that you just have to throw any sense of thinking out the window to believe or buy into the story. And you certainly have to do that to buy into who this villain is, their motivations, and thus, I'm so grief-stricken, I'm so traumatized with the loss of my husband and my child that I'm going to go out and kill other people's husbands and wives and children. Okay. And then, obviously we could just get 1,500 Batman, people that Batman saved in a building together. That seems a lot more complicated than they're hinting at here. So that's my issues with that one. It's a light recommend. The art's fantastic. You get some decent moments here. There's some good action. It looks nice. Ducard's pretty cool. It's just the villain falls apart, in my opinion. And they should have done this reveal because it wasn't someone from Batman's past that They should have done it earlier so it didn't feel like it was supposed to be a big reveal, because when it happens, you're like, oh, cool. Somebody I've never heard of before. Nice. Like, you build anticipation for something like that, and then when you get the payoff, it's not really a payoff, at least in my opinion. So that is This Week in Batman. Much better than last week. I got 3 recommends. Not highly recommends, but I am recommending Nightwing, I'm recommending Catwoman, and I'm certainly recommending Batman the Detective. I do not recommend Batman because it's just it's very, very disappointing. Let's put it that way. In comparison to the art, the writing is it's very poor.